I grew up in the North Deanery in Lagodi. My home parish was actually St. Joseph Bramble, which is a few miles north of Lagodi. After graduating high school, I attended the Franciscan University of Steubenville for a year. And there I spent a number of years discerning my vocation. I did a good bit of missionary work overseas, and it's there that I completed studies in philosophy and a large part of studies in theology. And in returning back to kind of my home diocese where I grew up, where the first seeds of faith were planted, I was able to get into faith formation at one of our local parishes at St. John the Evangelist Daylight. Catechesis is not a word that you'll hear many people use in a sentence. I think it's closely tied to another word that we don't often hear, or we often hear, but don't often hear an explanation of, and that's evangelization. And I think the two of those understood together are what really help us to understand what faith formation is all about. Evangelization, I like to think of, is just the entire process of the gospel. Evangelization is related to the word in Latin for gospel, the whole process of the gospel becoming our lives. Catechesis is a privileged process within evangelization. We can think of evangelization as beginning when someone first hears about the person of Jesus Christ. And catechesis begins normally a little bit later on when someone has that initial conversion experience to Christ. And both of them really continue until God brings us into full communion with Him in heaven. I like to think of the office of catechesis as really at the service of the bishop, at the service of our parishes. The main ones that we work with in our parishes would be the parish catechetical leaders, as well as the OCIA coordinators. And really in supporting them and helping to be a good resource for them for all the work that they do. So whether it be grade school religious education, adult faith formation, preparation for the sacraments, pretty much anything and everything between when it comes to growing in our knowledge of, our understanding of, our living out of our faith. There's a few events that the Office of Catechesis is able to help offer in regards to OCIA and to help facilitate that process, one of which we offer an annual retreat here at the Diocese where all the candidates and the catechumens, those preparing to enter the church, are able to come and to have a day. Most of the time, Bishop Siegel's able to be there. For many of them, it might be the only time that they're actually here at the Catholic Center. And I think that's a great occasion. It also gives them the opportunity to see our bishop outside of the rite of election and the call to continuing conversion that many of them attend at, I guess all of them attend at the cathedral. And one of the purposes of that day is not merely to help them get ready for entering the church or coming into full communion with the church at Easter, but also to kind of answer the question of what is my life going to look like afterwards? Now that I become Catholic, is this even possible to live a lifestyle like this? What's it going to look like? And that's really what we want to speak to let them know that, yes, living our faith is a challenge. Living our faith in today's world is difficult, but with the grace of God and striving to correspond to His grace, relying on all the gifts, for example, of the sacraments that we're able to avail ourselves of, yes, it is possible. It is possible to live as a Catholic, really ordering my life toward that in a way that's authentic and meaningful, that gives joy and peace to my life. The pastoral priorities of our diocese really focus on encountering Christ, deepening in our relationship with Him, and engaging as missionary disciples, be it within our own parish communities and the world at large. The end goal of catechesis really syncs up perfectly with that. The end goal of catechesis ultimately is to help us to grow in our union, our communion with God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and beginning in this life and ultimately reaching its perfection in heaven with the Trinity and with communion of saints. The end goal of catechesis, of faith formation, is really to be brought into communion with Christ, to really have that relationship with Him, and to allow our lives to be shaped and formed by that relationship. And that's going to bring us into greater communion with others.